Now, a lot of you would think I'm crazy. And the reason why I say that is because what if I told you that Christopher Nolan has been waging a quiet, decade long war against the canon of anything, and the internet just finally woke up to the casualty count? Right now, the timeline was absolutely nuked over the upcoming Odyssey. You've got corners of the internet calling it a blasphemous adaptation of Greek heritage. You've got others accusing Nolan of engaging in historical revisionism just to serve his own ego. And for the first time in his legendary career, a massive vocal chunk of the audience is turning their backs on him. But the bitter truth that a lot of y'all don't understand is this is not new. Christopher Nolan has always been a lore killer. He has always treated lore as a suggestion rather than a scripture. He has spent his entire career rewriting mythology, stripping away the source material, and discarding even comic book truths the second they got in the way of the specific high concept machinery he wanted to build in a movie via story. And the difference is, right, we've seen Batman fans, they were willing to look the other way because the final product was genius to an extent. History buffs made exceptions because the skill was undeniable with Oppenheimer. But with the Odyssey, Nolan has pushed the line too far. People are finally seeing the pattern, and this movie might just be the definitive autopsy of Christopher Nolan's true complicated relationships with the stories that we hold sacred. So, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Loreverse, and this is where we are going to dive deep into the mythology, the geopolitics, the hidden symbolism, and the tectonic shifts behind the biggest franchises in entertainment. And today we're going to dissect the Odyssey firestorm that has been created. Because look, the trailer dropped and the internet immediately hit a civil war state, and now we need to look at the wreckage. And the real question is, are the fans justified in their outrage, or is the inevitable friction between modern fandom, or is this just the inevitable friction between modern fandom and a master auteur? Let's break it all down. It's your boy Stevie Hayes. Let's dive into this. So, why is the internet currently a battlefield over the Odyssey? It started with the casting. So when the trade papers announced that Lupita would be playing Helen of Troy, the discourse became radioactive. We've seen this debate 1,000 times, but it hit harder here because Nolan has aggressively marketed this film as an exercise in hyper authentic realism. Nolan didn't just make a movie, he went on a pilgrimage. He shot on 65 millimeter IMAX film. He shunned green screens for practical, salt-swept Mediterranean locations, and he obsessed over the metallurgy of Bronze Age armor. And he sold us a promise of total historical immersion. So when the casting choices felt like they belonged to a different creative philosophy, the audience did feel betrayed. They thought they were buying history, but they felt they were getting revision. Then the rumors of Elliot Page as Achilles hit, and the traditionalist wing of the internet lost its mind. And don't even get me started with Matt Damon as Odysseus, because, you know, he's a Boston-born American accented playing the wildest king in Greek legend. You know, critics were quick to point out the irony. You look, think about it. Nolan spent $200 million trying to make a world look like a 1200 BC, but cast a man who looks like he's about to walk into a Dunkin' Donuts. But that was just the appetizer. The trailer was the main course, and it broke everything. Now, we saw the trailer dropped and the immersion shattered. Why? Because of the cadence. Ancient Greek mythology at its core, it's inherently poetic, it's rhythmic, it's elevated and mythic. And when we see a hero from the Bronze Age, we expect the speech to carry the weight of 3,000 years of legend. Instead, Nolan's characters are speaking in the snappy, dry, hypermodern cadence of a contemporary prestige HBO drama. And viewers immediately drew comparisons to the Marvel quip-heavy style, not because there were jokes, but because the speech patterns felt stripped of their mythic divinity. It felt corporate, it felt modern. And when you apply that to a foundational pillar of Western civilization, it creates a massive disconnect. And fans didn't just want a war movie, they wanted a hymn. And Nolan, it feels like they're giving us as fans a briefing. And if you're surprised by this, you have not been paying attention. Nolan has always been Nolanizing lore for 20 years. Look at the Dark Knight trilogy. A mass amount of fandom reveres those movies as the gold standard of superhero cinema, but if you put them next to the actual Batman lore and comics, they are barely recognizable. No Lazarus Pits. There's no supernatural Ra's al Ghul. He's just a guy that has a sword. There's no Arkham Asylum with a gothic horror aesthetic. It's just a standard hospital. No Bane powered by Venom, and the list goes on and on and on. And Nolan didn't want to make a Batman movie. He wanted to make a movie about urban terrorism and moral absolutism. And he used Batman as the skin for that project. He stripped the source material of its comic bookiness to prioritize his own thematic realism. And the reality is, fans loved it. And we let him get away with it because the results were undeniable. But we made a mistake. We assumed he was preserving the lore when he was actually just using it as clay to sculpt his own weird obsession. And even Oppenheimer, a literal historical biography, proves this. Nolan took a man defined by dense political infighting and complex scientific bureaucracy and molded him into a modern day Prometheus, a tragic Greek style, figure crushed by the weight of his own hubris. And he even sanded down the historical edges to emphasize the emotional mythology. And because it worked, nobody complained. But here's the problem. You can mythologize a physicist. You can't mythologize the Odyssey, because the Odyssey is already a freaking myth. So by trying to ground it in Nolan style realism, he essentially is trying to make a myth realistic, which is a paradox that creates a vacuum where the soul of the story should be. And let's be crystal clear here. Christopher Nolan does not love lore. He loves concepts. He's obsessed with the mechanics of memory, the subjectivity of time, and the weight of obsession. And to Nolan, a script is a clockwork engine. If an element of the lore, be it a Lazarus pit or a specific Greek legend, doesn't fit the gears of the story he's trying to build, he just throws it out. Batman was a vehicle for his study on chaos. The Odyssey is clearly his vehicle for a study on survival and human endurance. But for fans, lore is the heart of the story. You don't just ask a fan to choose between the heart and the mechanics of the plot. And that is where Nolan is clearly losing the war. And the speed at which the internet pivoted from Nolan can do no wrong to Nolan is destroying history is staggering, but it does reveal a fundamental truth about modern fandom. We tolerate reinterpretation only when it emotionally satisfies us. We accepted his Batman because it felt honest to the spirit of the character, even if it ignored the canon. I did not, though. A lot of y'all did. But with the Odyssey, the audience doesn't feel that honesty. They feel a detachment. They see a filmmaker wearing Greek mythology like a costume, putting his own worldview inside the mask, and people are calling it lore hating, but maybe it's just the first time Nolan's reinterpretation has failed to align with the audience's emotional attachment to the actual material. Now, underneath the casting debates and the costume critiques, there is a deep-seated cultural fear. People are exhausted, and they see the entire landscape of entertainment turning into a content farm where every story, no matter how sacred or how foundational, is getting a modern reimagining. And when they see the Odyssey being filtered through a 21st century Nolan lens, they aren't just seeing a movie, they're seeing a last frontier of sacred storytelling being colonized by modern franchise making. And the outrage isn't just about a movie, it's about the fear that nothing is allowed to just be what it was written to be anymore. Here is the irony here. From a box office standpoint, this is the best thing that could have happened, because nothing in Hollywood sells tickets like a controversial event. People who haven't picked up a book since high school are now diving into Wikipedia and Google AI and all the AIs to argue about Bronze Age armor. The discourse is creating a gravity well. Whether you hate the casting or love the director, you're talking about it. And look at me, I'm making a whole 10-minute video about it, and you're counting down the days to the premiere. Nolan knows about this as well. And whether he's intentionally, provocative or just unapologetic, he is the king of the event movie. And make no mistake, this is going to be the biggest event of the year. So at the end of the day, the Odyssey is exposing a truth that fandoms have been in denial about for a decade. Christopher Nolan has never been a steward of your favorite lore. He is a cinematic surgeon. He opens up the story, takes out the things he doesn't like, replaces it with his own obsession, and stitches it back together. And sometimes the patient survives and becomes a superhero. Sometimes the patient ends up on the operating table of internet controversy. But I want to know where you guys stand here. Is Christopher Nolan's refusal to bow to lore his greatest strength as an artist, or has his hubris finally stripped the soul out of a story that didn't need improving? Drop your thoughts and comments below. And I want to know, do you think he hates lore, or does he just love his own vision more? And are you guys going to see the Odyssey on opening night, or are you going to sit this one out? Now, if you guys enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our upcoming deep dives on a bunch of other stuff. But I love you guys. Stay crispy and peace out.